What is up, everyone? Hope you're doing well today. JD here, coming at you with another knife review video. Really excited about this one. Been waiting for Civivi to drop this one. This is the Civivi Cogent. This here is a 3.47 inch 14C 28N coated blade steel. Hopefully you can see that pretty good. Yeah, camera's focusing really nicely with this new background. It has a 4.41 inch G10 scale, and in my case purple. I think it looks really awesome. I think they changed their pocket clip, but I'll come back to that in just a moment. This one here is a button lock on bearings, so you have the option, I keep wanting to do it sideways, you have the option of just using the button lock like you do on the button lock Elementum, but it also has a really well done flipper tab. I love the fact that they carried that jimping all the way around to the front. Really good choice there, Civivi. Nicely done. Total length 7.88 inches, so just under 8 inches for the knife. The claim weight is 3.7 ounces, and I'm going to check that right now. Of course, there we go. My overhead light wants to pick up the reflection, or it wants to pick up the overhead light reflections. 3.7 ounces, so exactly what they claim. I love when a knife manufacturer tells you the weight and it matches. That's always awesome. I want to do some comparison knives really quick before I get into my thoughts and impressions on this knife, which this is going to be a lot of praise on this one here. This one here is really well done, and I also want to do some comparison knives that are in that button lock genre. But if you're enjoying the video, think about leaving a like for me, guys. It really helps me on YouTube, and if you enjoy the content and sharing all of this with me, consider subscribing. Thanks for all the support. I appreciate it. I just wanted to do that really quick before I get into the comparison knives. So we'll go ahead and start out with the Spyderco PM2. Let me go ahead and get this lined up. The PM2, let me bring this down just a little bit. I think I can afford to do that. There we go. The PM2 has a 3.44 inch S45 VN blade, a 4.81 inch G10. In this particular instance, that's the Titanium crossfade scale, if you're wondering what that is. And this has the Titanium hardware on it and a Lynch Northwest deep carry clip. Overall length 8.25 inches, and you can see tip to end it is just a little bit longer, but the Cogent is a full-size knife by all intents and purposes. Weight on the Spyderco is 3.75 ounces, so they're roughly about the same weight, which is pretty impressive for a button lock. And then the other knife that I want to throw into the comparison is the Yojimbo. The Yojimbo has a 3.125 inch 20 CV blade steel with a 4.5 inch G10 scale, coming in at a total of 7.75 inches and weight at 4 ounces. So this one is really close to the Cogent, and you can really see with the blade being a little bit longer on the Cogent and the handle being a little bit shorter, but they're still roughly very close. We'll do some profile comparisons here in a moment, and the purpose of the profile comparisons is so that you can get a gauge for the thickness if you happen to carry any of these knives. Next up, I'm going to bring out my Axis lock knives, and I am going to start with the Hogue K320 by Sig Sauer. This is a really fun fidgeable knife. This one here has a 3.5 inch S35V drop point blade with a 4.5 inch polymer handle, coming in at a total of 8 inches and weighing in at 4.16 ounces. So another knife that compares pretty favorably, a little bit heavier and very similar in length. The 7.88 inches on the Cogent and the 8 inches on the Sig is just barely noticeable. You see a little bit of that from the tip and the handle when you look at it from the pivot. The handle length is very similar, but the Sig is just a little bit longer, and it has a little bit more of a presence with the blade, but it's still a very good comparison here. Next up is going to be the Benchmade Bug Out. The Benchmade Bug Out has a 3.24 inch S30V blade steel with a 4.22 inch G10 handles by Titanium, and overall 7.46 inches, so slightly shorter, and a weight of 2.3 ounces with the G10 handles on there. So you can see this actually, surprisingly, from a shape perspective, because the bug out's going to be thinner, is very similar. So that's why I feel like the Cogent is actually a very friendly pocket knife for your EDC. We'll set these aside and come back to them in just a minute to do those profile comparisons. My last set of knives are my budget knives, and that's going to be the Civivi Elementum. This is another Civivi, but this one here is very popular in the EDC community, and I think that's for the size, weight, and the diversity of the offerings coming in at the Elementum, because it's so popular. You can get it in so many different flavors. It has a 2.96 inch D2 steel blade, 4.03 inches in the handles. My particular model has the micarta scales. Overall length is 6.99 inches, so just under 7 inches, and the second lightest knife in the comparison at 2.89 ounces. So this really will give you an idea of the Cogent being a full-size pocket knife. If you're looking for something closer to the size of the Elementum at that 3-inch mark, this is probably one you're going to have to pass on and hope that Civivi comes out with like a Cogent Mini or does like a different knife entirely with this button lock. And I'm going to get into the knife here in just a minute. I don't want to get ahead of myself. The next knife and the last knife in the comparison is going to be the CJRB Feldspar. This one here has the 3.5 inch Stonewash D2 steel with a 4.6 inch micarta scale handle. Overall length 8.1 inches, so a little bit longer than the Cogent, and coming in at 3.67 ounces, and that's roughly about the same weight. So you can really see this really lines up nicely with the Feldspar in my opinion as far as size. The Cogent seems a little bit more slender in the handle, but offers a lot of cutting surface with that clip point. That's really well done. Let me go ahead and knock the profile comparisons out the way for you guys so you can get a sense of the thickness of this knife, which is it's really well done. Like, they did a fantastic job with this knife. So we'll start out with the Elementum first. So you can see here, it's almost the same size, just slightly thicker than the Elementum, which is impressive because this is a much smaller knife. And then you can see the CJRB Feldspar at its thickest point. The Feldspar and the Cogent are identical, but the contoured handles on here get thinner as you get towards the edge, so a little bit thinner on the contoured portions of the Feldspar. The bug out I'll bring out really quick, but you know the bug out is just, it's a thin knife. I mean, this thing is thinner than anything that I've run through in the comparisons, and it's going to be thinner than the polymer handles. I mean, the K320 always looks significantly thicker, but that's because of, like I said, the vase shape to it. They thickened it out here significantly and made it beefy around where the able lock comes out. But when you take it into consideration where it's at its thinnest, you can see, I'm gonna have to do it from the top. Let me bring it up a little bit. That pocket clip is in the way for my thumb. You can see it's actually thinner, and then as you progress up the knife, you can just kind of see how the K320 thickens up. So I don't want people that see this knife and think, oh my gosh, it actually is really comfortable in hand because of the fact that it's like that for a work knife. Last two knives, I'm going to bring out the one that I think it'll compare most like to, and that's going to be the Ojimbo 2 and the Para 3. They're both the same thickness. And you can see here, I'm going to call that even. It might be slightly thicker, but I think that's close enough to call it even. It's not a significant difference. The contour scales from Titanium for the Paramilitary 2 are always a little tough to do for this comparison because it does contour. You can see it's even in the edges, but in the thickness of the blade work contours, which helps the ergonomics, it's a little bit thinner. All right, so that is everything that I wanted to compare to for my usual suspects. I do want to talk a little bit about the knife first. So the action on this knife is really good. I'm not quite sure how I got oil on the knife. The action is phenomenal. I love this low profile flipper tab. You can push button. Well, I just demonstrated how you can fail it by trying to do it slow for the camera. But you can push button or you can light switch. And you can light switch from the top because it has enough texture. My ring finger was on the blade. I apologize. You can texture from here and light switch because the jimping is so well done here. As I mentioned earlier, if you come down here in front of where the clip point starts, you can really get your your fingers under there. I'm not gripping this knife very well today. And you can really get that reverse flick going. I'm trying to demonstrate where my finger is and I keep missing the spot. It takes a second to find it. There it is. I swear I can reverse flick this. I'm like under pressure in front of the camera trying to do this. I can't do it. There we go. I mean, you have to come way down. I have to come way down. You may not. I know Jared over at Knees Knives, he probably can do it because he's really good at this. I just recently, because of him, started trying to do this to see what I can and can't reverse flick. So considering there's really nothing on there to be able to get that leverage to reverse flick, it is impressive. But how it's intended to be used, it's really smooth. The ceramic bearings, Civivi always does a really good job. Now, the texturing on here is very nice. You have a lot of grip points for your hands, and I like that because if you work with gloves, I think this is really where you're going to get your grip with your gloves and this knife in your hand. It has the thumb jimping here, which is really nice depending on what you're trying to do on the table. I imagine if you're working on the table like that, that's where this jimping comes into play because you really can get some leverage down on the table with the fine tip, and it's going to give you a lot of cutting surfaces with the way that they did the ramp up to the clip point on the actual edge. Really, really nice. They gave you a little bit of a sharpening tool here, right in front of the plunge grind. I mean, it's just a little tiny bit. It does have a spot for you guys that like lanyards. They built it in there for you. So Civivi is always keeping you in mind, and they are doing an excellent job not sacrificing the pocket clip position to give that to folks, and I'm okay with that. As long as this is not an afterthought, I'm good with that. Now, I do think that they've changed up the pocket clip, so this is going to be the true test. I'm bringing it out here for the first time for all of us to look at it together to see if they actually made a change. Look at the tip. You see how the tip is coming down a little bit? They did change their pocket clip. Civivi is listening. Yeah, this is a completely different pocket clip. Maybe it's not the same pocket clip, but if they continue to do that little bit of knockdown there that they have off of here, that is awesome. I was wondering because in my hands, I feel like I don't feel that anymore. Like it's there, but it's no longer kind of stabbing my hand. It's just nestled under there just enough to be comfortable. Way to go, Civivi. Really liking this knife. Now, let's get into some knives because I just brought one out here that this is probably going to compare to. So I'm going to bring out the button lock, Elementum button lock. I got to remember now, I got two Civivis out here. And I'm going to bring out another one that I think it's probably going to compare to a bit closer than the button lock. And that is the ProTech Malibu, which is set up identically to the Cogent. Now, there's some differences here with the sizes. You can see the Cogent is just larger overall. It has more blade length, it has more handle length. But I thought this was going to be an interesting comparison because this is the first iteration of the button lock. And if you take a look here, you can actually see that this is a liner lock. You see how it's protruding out just a little bit? I'll hold the knife here so I can show you how it actuates. When you push this button lock in, it works like Spyderco's compression lock, and it pushes the liner in. Now, the liner is not what's locking up the blade. It's actually the piece here on the button lock that's keeping the blade locked, but the tension, the spring tension is actually coming from the liner. And I apologize, I have pocket lint in here. Man, this camera is picking everything up. And this is a really fun fidgetable knife. You can't do any of the reverse flick because the button lock actually does secure the blade and keep it from opening, but it is the only method of deployment. And I think that's some of the reason that people were complaining about the Elementum button lock. What the Cogent has done is it's actually changed the way that it's done. And you can see it's a plunge spring, much like what you find here on the ProTech Malibu, but you can't see as much of it because of the thicker scales. And a lot of people see this thick scale and they think that this is a really thick knife in hand, but it's just the scales are really thick and the blade profile and everything are really thin. So those thick scales are very deceptive, and I think people get thrown off by that. The flipper tab, I think the ergos and everything are just so different, it's going to be hard to kind of compare it. The sharpening choil, the flipper tab, they're all jimped very well for the knife that they are, dedicated to. The Elementum does have the advantage because it's a reversible deep carry pocket clip. The G10 is going to offer more texturing. Are my hands sweaty? I think it might be me. I'm in the garage, so it's a little cooler out here, so it could be me. They both have a flat grind, and they both offer great utility perspectives. And you can see a lot of the similarities on how the button lock works and how they compare. And I think this is one that a lot of people are going to be interested in. And I know that I'm running long on this video, and hopefully you made it to this point to really see the comparison. But I just wanted to talk about like the action on these two. They are really good. I have no lock stick on my knife at all. It came buttery smooth. The ProTech does feel much smaller in hand because it is smaller. This feels really comfortable in hand, guys. The ergonomics are really nice, and it feels like it's meant to be used hard.
That's what she said.
Like it feels like it's meant to be a hard use knife, and I have a lot of faith in the button lock system because of the fact that it operates so much like Spyderco's compression lock. But anyway, that is my review and the knives that I wanted to compare to of the Civivi Cogent. I think Civivi has hit a home run with this knife. I think they've executed this button lock system superbly. I hope they continue to offer other knives with this type of deployment. Very fidgetable. And the ergos here and the update to the pocket clip. Woo! Baby, I'm so happy to see that.
That's what she said.
Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you enjoy the content, think about subscribing. Totally up to you, but I appreciate all the support from you guys that have decided to or decide to. And turn on your notifications for that future content. I hope all of you have a fantastic week, guys. And until next time, peace.